The Educator Effectiveness Committee is now being called to order. The Educational Effectiveness Committee is now being called to order. Good morning to you.
Have time to research it
Can I get a roll call?
between now and...
Yes, sir. Dr. Bofi? Dr. Bofi is present. I've seen her. Mr. Davis?
Present.
Ms. Edmonston? Present. Mr. Gardy?
Here.
Ms. Holloway? Present. Dr. Jones?
Present.
Ms. Lewis?
Present.
Ms. Orange Jones?
Present.
Ms. Rock?
Present.
Dr. Thomason?
Present.
Ms. Fauché?
Here.
And Ms. Smith?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you for that. We'll take our first agenda item.
Your consent agenda is ready for approval, adding items 5.1 through 5.5.
Can I get a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rock, second by Mr. Davis. Any comments? Any objections? Motion approved.
Your first item is on page 6, item 3.1, consideration of recognizing Ms. Joni Smith, 2017 Louisiana Teacher of the Year, for her service on the BESE Educator Effectiveness Committee, and introducing Ms. Kimberly Eckert, 2018 Louisiana Teacher of the Year. The recommendation is to receive. There's also a handout at your place.
Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Bofi, and second by Ms. Holloway. And before we take any comments, I do want to say I want to thank Ms. Joni Smith for her service on this board and her dedication and her commitment and just being an outstanding person. And we have a board member that has been Teacher of the Year, and I know she'll do great service. And I want to say congratulations to each, the Principal of the Year and the new Teacher of the Year for 2018 and all the finalists. But we're going to ask Dr. Bofi if she would, because she did such a great job last year, a lot better than what I'm going to do. Would she, at this point, take over the service and pay respect to the 2017 as well as the 2018 Teachers of the Year? Thank you. Dr. Bofi.
Thank you. I have to say that Joni has done an incredible job representing the students of this state, and I think moving forward on our vision for our children. It was perfect timing to have Joni this year as we were working on the development of the new science standards, and even more importantly, as she will continue on with the implementation of those standards and making sure that we have high quality implementation. So for those of you who are not familiar with the program, you have this year of recognition that is just an incredible year where you're celebrated in a way that I wish all teachers could be celebrated. I wish all teachers would feel as special as I know Joni has felt through this year. And then it doesn't ever really go away. So I was recognized in 2010, but there's still people who, when they hear about the honor, just kind of stop and look at me like, wow, that's incredible. And it is incredible. And I think that it also creates this great responsibility for us as educators to continue throughout our career to serve students. And so, Joni, we thank you so much for all that you've done to serve students on this board and out this board, and in our state and outside of the state. And I've been lucky to witness some of that firsthand and have always been proud of what you've done and the fact that you've always clearly looked at the students and thought about the students and represented what was best for them. I have to also say that I think we've come a long way since 2010. So part of the reason that I actually ran for the board was because I spent a year practicing my teacher voice and really understanding what I valued, but didn't have opportunities to use it. And so now we have our 6,000 teacher leaders. We have our mentor teachers who are playing such an important part of our teacher preparation. And we also have a Teacher of the Year who sits on the board with us that helps us stay connected to our excellent educators. So I'm excited about the work that Joni's done, but I'm also just excited about how far we've come as a state, and I look forward to us to continue to grow in that area. We're very fortunate as a state to have a nonprofit organization that helps us recognize the Teachers of the Year. So at the least, if no one else thought it was incredible, just the fact that she gets to drive around a Mercedes, I think has been pretty cool. So now I know Joni is going to tell us a little bit about her year, but then also introduce some of our new awardees. And so, Joni, when you're finished with that, we do have a little token.
Oh my goodness.
It's not a Mercedes, but I think it's something that you'll always treasure, and we certainly want to hand that over.
Thank you. Okay, if I may, before we start that opportunity to recognize our new State Teacher of the Year and Principal of the Year that is here today, I would like to thank the board. I feel like this needs to be a public opportunity to hear this. I had the benefit and the pleasure of sitting at many tables this year, and unfortunately sometimes those tables were quite controversial, meaning that I had to use my teacher voice quite often because I wanted to remind the people that I sat with that the focus should always be student-centered. But yet, when I sat behind this panel throughout this year, this was the only time I found myself not being very vocal because it wasn't needed. As we were having conversations throughout the year about our state and making large decisions, I agreed with the majority of the people behind this panel. And every time I went to speak, Holly Bofi always stole my words, and I never got a chance to speak. And I love that she is behind this panel because her teacher heart is so evident. And literally verbatim ideas that I would have spoken about concerns that were at the table, she said them. So I just want to make an opportunity to say thank you. Tony Davis, Kathy Edmondson, all of you. I could say something wonderful about each and every one of you. Dr. Thomason, your soft-spoken, kindred words you've always shared with me. Nikki always supported me and guided me and pointed me in the right direction when I was headed in the wrong direction, didn't know what committee meeting to go to when. Making sure paperwork. Shan Davis did a wonderful job at making sure I was equipped for every meeting. Dr. Lori, everybody, Dr. Jones, if you've never had an opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Jones, you are missing out in life. He finds a way of making the most uncomfortable situations quite comfortable. And last but not least, Jada. Jada is my science guru. She has made sure I knew about every STEM opportunity that was plugging into our state. She was searching on social media, tagging me left and right, and I loved that. I did. And so our science minds have really joined forces, and I love that. And John White, thank you so much. Thank you for elevating teachers. Thank you for leading in such a dynamic way, even when your job was uncomfortable. I can't imagine your position and your role. And I also want to say thank you for elevating science. I've noticed every time you've spoken about it, and it really has touched my heart. So to each and every one of you on this board, thank you so much for the work that you do. It has been my honor and a pleasure to sit next to you. And I appreciate everything that you do, literally. Thank you again. And at this time, I'm going to bring Kimberly and our new State Principal of the Year that is here today, Tommy Byler, to the front so I can introduce you to these wonderful people. So if you'll join me down front, is that okay? Okay. I'm just going to make them a little comfortable for a moment. All right, so we have Kimberly Eckert. She is a 9th grade high school English teacher here at Brooklyn High School, West Baton Rouge. She is also the 2018 Louisiana State Teacher of the Year. And I'm so dynamic work with her kids. If you ever have a chance to visit her classroom, please do so. Also, we have the 2018 Louisiana State Principal of the Year, Tommy Byler. Teaches in Vermillion Parish, and he, let me go back to my notes because these numbers were very important. He's been teaching for 4 years. He's been leading the school for 4 years. I'm so used to being teachers, I apologize. But he's been in education for 27 years. However, his school has grown from a score of 92.9 to 120. So those numbers are highly recommended. Thank you. If you will you come down for a photo opportunity? None of our cities are allowed to take it.
Might block some stuff here. I take up a little bit.
I know.
That was exciting. I'm just so proud of all the teachers and commitment to the state, and I'm proud of you two for being here today. At this point, we'll ask any board member if they have any comments about anything about the Teacher of the Year. Anybody have any more comments?
I just have one kind of generic comment. That is to say that I hope that all the board members and everyone in the audience is really, if you're not aware, please make yourself aware of the Dream Teachers organization and the partnership with the Department of Education and Dream Teachers to announce these Principal of the Year and Teacher of the Year semifinalists. But it's not just the one event and that leads to the announcement of this person for the year, but there are so many things that happen throughout the year and the process that's involved, the different ways to recognize outstanding educators and principals throughout our state and all the districts throughout the year. It's a really awesome partnership and program that should encourage everyone out there to make sure you learn more about it and support any way you can.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Davis. Anybody else?
Dr. Tomlinson.
Ms. Edmonton.
Thank you. I just want to once again tell Joni how much I appreciate her,
Likewise.
how much I know that her heart is for kids, and that is the most important thing for our teachers, and she is such a model for that. And I also just want to say I did not know about the car, but that's a great perk, and you deserve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Well, at this point, we're going to recognize the superintendent. I know the superintendent always have comments, so we'll let him have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Not always, but occasionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overstated the point.
I wanted just to say a brief word about Joni and a couple specific things. I feel like there are two reasons that it was extraordinary grace that she was made the Teacher of the Year this year. And it's almost, when you think about it, it's so fortuitous that it had to be divine on some level. She first, soon after being named Teacher of the Year, her parish was inundated with a horrible tragedy. And of course, so many parishes were affected by this, but really Livingston, the sheer totality of it in Livingston was tragic and remarkable. And her community in Albany was one of the most affected communities. And so I felt like it was a chance to say to the best of a parish that was experiencing such extraordinary challenges. And so I thank you for you and your colleagues' heroism during that period. Also, this was the year of science. And what an incredible thing. And I felt that Kelly Stomps, the year before, had been able to begin to elevate her professional vocation, her content area in music. And we had started the process, but really Kelly elevated it and Kelly dignified it. Excuse me. Well, she did too. But Joni elevated it and dignified it. And I felt that there were times along the way where somebody had to say, well, look, let's keep this focused on the kids. And she was that person every time. And so I think that sometimes we think about awards as just awards, but this was a year of elevation of human values in Livingston, of academic values and what our kids need in science. And we had a living, breathing embodiment of that every day in our Teacher of the Year. And so our state owes you a debt of gratitude for your service. And I respect you deeply as a colleague and a friend. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The motion was to receive. Do we have any objections? Motion carries. Thank you all again. Next item.
Your next item is on Page 7, item 4.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 746, Louisiana Standards for State Certification of School Personnel, regarding actions related to suspension, denial, and revocation of Louisiana certificates for educators and technical edits. The department recommendation is to approve the revisions to Bulletin 746 regarding teacher notification as notice of intent.
The recommendation was to approve this item. Do we have a motion? Dr. Hollywood.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Have any public comments? Yeah, I think we'll take the public comments before, and then if the board have any comments, we'll take the comments as well. Mr. Lee Burrows. Mrs. I'm sorry.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher, St. Tammany. Dr. Jones and I have had a little bit of conversation about this issue of teachers with that have had criminal backgrounds and BESE's approval process of those, and that some of those, by the time they get to BESE, have already been employed by school districts. My concern right now with your bulletin is that it doesn't seem to address, and I don't know that it can, non-certified personnel, teachers. Charters now are allowed to hire non-certified teachers and certainly administrators, and it's getting to be more and more charter administrators who are not teachers, possibly never been teachers. There's a recent case that was published in the Lens about an administrator that was hired by Collegiate, which I'll talk about later, who has a felony conviction. And since it's not a certificated personnel, there's evidently no consequences through BESE. So I'm just hoping that those sorts of circumstances are going to be addressed either or through BESE and the state legislature, so that there can be some statutes that cover those people, so that parents and other personnel and schools, and certainly BESE, know who is employed by our schools that have been convicted, particularly of certain felonies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more public comments? Any comments from the board at this time? Dr. Jones.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to use a little privilege for a moment and recognize that we have a representative, Pat Smith, in the audience with us. I don't know how she snuck in, but I didn't see her till she got up here today. But and it's fortunate, Representative Smith, that you're here today, and Ms. Barrios. It is true, I think, that is a flaw in our system, that we have the ability for people who've been convicted of felonies that don't have to meet the same certification standards that other teachers do that can teach in a charter school system. So, I've said it publicly several times. There'll be a case coming up in a little while where I'm going to ask a question about it, but I've made it plain that I'm going to seek legislation in the next session to see if I can find a legislator who's willing to put the same requirements on the charter school as far as who can be employed as we have on the other public schools in Louisiana.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Any more comments? Mr. Garvey.
Yes, I'm wondering if we have a representative from the Charter School Association here today that can comment on this issue. No? Okay, I will, I'll be talking to them because Mr. Jones's planned activity sounds like a good one, and I'd like to support it.
May I make one just brief comment?
Yes, please.
Just to be clear, a criminal background check is required for anybody who's employed in schools, and there is a national database that governs this. So it's not as if there is not a procedure in place for one to be aware of whether or not someone has a criminal record. I happen to agree with the direction that Dr. Jones is going, so I'm not suggesting that, but I do think that the discussion is creating the impression that one could get hired without an understanding as to whether or not one has a criminal record, and that's not the case given the background system.
And I have to respond to that, Superintendent White. The problem is not that the law doesn't require them to do the background check. The problem is that there's no penalty for not doing it. And the fact is that we don't really know whether they do it or not. But apparently, if they do, they still hire them. And that's what we have a case later this morning that's going to illustrate it once again. But the problem I have is we would never know it until there was a problem. And if you look at the old statutes of Louisiana, it's been clear for years and years that you're supposed to have some kind of a license to teach, and that license has some requirements to go with it. So in my mind, if a teacher loses their license to teach in Louisiana, they shouldn't be able to go down the street to a charter school and get employed without it becoming apparent to anyone involved. And so, obviously I'm lobbying to Representative Smith in hopes that maybe she'll help me support my legislation here. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, the safety of the kids in Louisiana comes before anything else. Sometimes in life you forfeit your ability to be able to teach the children of Louisiana.
Yeah. And Mr. Jones, or Dr. Jones, my point was only that there is a system for identifying people with criminal backgrounds. There are people with criminal records who are hired into traditional district, charter public schools regularly. I think that is a legitimate issue to be discussed. But there is a system for making people aware of one's criminal background.
Any more comments? Okay, Ms. Boucher.
I have a couple of questions just so I can understand some of the changes. One that maybe goes along with that under Section 905, B and C were added. Could you explain to me where it says B, an application for a Louisiana teaching certificate or an application for the renewal of an expired teaching certificate shall be denied if the individual applying for the certificate has ever had any professional license / certificate denied, suspended, revoked, or voluntarily surrendered. I'm not sure if I'm quite understanding what that means. I know that we go through records review where licenses have been revoked in the past, yet we are granting them again because we have a process for that. So how does B fit into that? Because it says an application shall be denied if they've ever had it suspended or revoked in the past. Or am I reading that incorrectly, Superintendent?
Can you tell me which?
Page 10.
Page 9 and 10.
Section,
Top of page 9.
Section 905.
You're at 905.
B.
Ms. Boucher, this refers to the application itself. It is denied. Then the person is allowed to go through the records review process as they are currently allowed to do so. So nothing changes with that. It's just clarifying that the information on the professional conduct form is grounds for denial of the application for the initial certification.
So you're saying staff denies it and there's appeal process
Correct.
to BESE for a records review?
Correct.
So that's all that particular one means. So it's really codifying the process we have in
Yes,
place
ma'am.
currently.
Codifying the professional conduct form
Right,
language
which we currently
specifically.
do. All right, and the other one that's totally unrelated, well, not totally unrelated, this participation in cheating now as determined by LDE rather than the LEA. Could you outline the process for me through which LDE would, I guess, initiate investigation and make that determination? Is it just based on data documentation that they determine someone has been cheating because of erasures, or do they actually, is the department now going to actually do a hands-on investigation in a district if there is a suspicion of cheating? It's got nothing to do right now with denial of a certificate, but the new definition of cheating, it says it will be determined by LDE staff as opposed to LEA staff.
So currently what's in policy is that the termination for cheating is what triggers the revocation, which posed sort of a tricky issue. Now it's moved towards the LDE confirming with the LEA that the teacher participated in cheating, and they conduct an investigation as they normally would, and that would accompany the paperwork that comes before the board as opposed to merely relying on the actual termination of the teacher.
I understand how you've outlined the process. What I'd like to know is how is LDE staff going to, or LDE going to take over all investigations throughout the state when cheating is suspected by anyone?
No, but this is per the process spelled out in Bulletin 118 already, which works with districts on initial level, but where there are deeper concerns, the department can work, for example, with the Inspector General's office to conduct an investigation. I think through either of those routes, the department could conclude that this person was at fault for cheating, and that person would then be eligible to lose their license.
Okay, so if there's a conflict with what an LEA determines and what LDE suspects, then LDE would override an LEA determination, is what you're saying?
Yes, but in order to get there, the department would have to conduct a true on-the-ground investigation. We're working with the Inspector General's office right now to do all of those. We don't have a forensics team that's capable of doing that work.
As long as there's going to be a process in place for an on-ground investigation, and not be just because maybe forms look like there may have been some excessive erasures or changes in a computer online program, so someone at a staff level reviewing some documents makes a determination. So as long as we have a process that does involve on-the-ground investigation along with LEA staff.
Yeah, there's no plan to change the process as it currently exists. And that process, as you know, oftentimes will yield a conversation between the local and the state, where the local takes action and we move on. The problem has become that when the local district takes a personnel action but won't itself say that it was specifically for cheating, then you have a licensed person who has just, as Dr. Jones was talking about earlier on the criminal issue, they'll just go down the street to do this and to do that.
Well,
So,
I definitely want that to happen. I just want the safeguards in place.
Yeah.
That it's going to be a joint effort, that there's going to be intense discussion and on-the-ground investigation, that it's not going to be looking at some documents at a staff level in Baton Rouge of what
absolutely
happens
agree.
around the entire
I
state.
totally agree. And that's all spelled out in Bulletin 118.
Okay.
Dr. Jones, I saw your hand.
Thank you. If you look at that section that Superintendent Boche was referring to, the last sentence in that said, the determination is made by the Louisiana Department of Education in consultation with the LEA as specified in Bulletin 118. And I think that's what John was referring to. But I think if you look over on section 908 on page 11, at what was changed, the line there that has been lined through and changed is that has been dismissed by his or her employing LEA as a result of being found guilty of facilitating cheating. Well, the problem with that is, and this is what surfaced recently in an actual case that we had that caused us to take a look at this, is that very often that's not listed as the reason why the employee's relationship with the employer was terminated, but in fact is the case. And even though it was known, since they didn't put specifically in their reasons for dismissal that was the issue, then even though we knew what was going on, we really didn't have the ability to take action with it. So this is an attempt, and I think a good attempt. I think, Shan, you I think are responsible for clearing
The LDA and myself, yes.
Yeah, okay. And so, it may not be perfect here, but it's certainly better than what we currently have. And I'm sure if some other problems arise with it, we'll do the same thing again until we get it right. But right now, it's such an area that is nebulous in terms of how do we deal with it, that we need to make this change.
I don't have a problem with the change per se, because the outcome is something that I agree with. I just want to make sure the processes are in place so that there is absolutely no dispute as to what the actual facts are.
Yeah.
Do we have any more comments from the board? Are we ready for the question? Motion 4.1, the recommendation was to approve. Any objections to the motion? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Your next item is on page 63, item 6.1, consideration of a records review regarding the issuance of a teaching certificate appropriate to the credentials of Ms. Sandra Washington. The recommendation is to grant, deny, or defer.
Do I have a motion? And if we have a motion, and if we do have a motion, is it to grant, deny, or what was the last one? Or to defer? Do we have a motion?
I move to grant.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Roche, second by Dr. Bolfe, and the motion was to grant. Do we have any discussion?
Is the person present?
Yes, Ms. Washington, please come down to the table.
Thank you for coming today. You can make any comments that you feel appropriate for the board to issue its decision.
Good morning. Thank you. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sandra Lewis Washington, and I would like to thank the board for considering issuing me my ancillary certificate. I would like to tell you guys a little about myself. I am now a director and owner of a daycare center in Plaquemine, Louisiana. I am also a licensed minister, been licensed since 2013. I am also a co-director of 2 independent athletic leagues for youth in our parish. One is the Plaquemine Renegades, which is football, and the other is the Louisiana Bayou Blaze, where we give underprivileged kids the opportunity to travel across the states and compete with other teams to show their athleticy. Also to give them the opportunity for an scapegoat to come out of the neighborhood where there are problems. I think that's it. That's just a little bit about myself and my history and what I'm setting forth to do in the future. Trying to build the community up with great leaders. And again, I'd like to thank you guys for considering the issuance of my certificate.
Do we have any, Dr. Jones, do you have comments?
Okay, first of all, let me just tell you, I'm going to vote for you, and I'm going to apologize to you because I'm going to have to ask you a couple of questions that will illustrate the point that I've got. How old were you when this happened?
I was 17.
17 years old, and it was a drug possession.
Yes, it was.
Felony drug possession.
Yes.
And it was plea bargained down with a couple other charges in it.
Yes, can I tell you why?
You can, but I'm not going to make you, and I'm certainly not going to ask you.
I would like to tell you why.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
I was 17 years old. At the time I was pregnant. I see that a lot myself. A lot of young kids make decisions and choices that can hurt them in their near future, but they don't know why, and that's why my stand is for today. But I was with an individual that was much older than I am, and that was the drug dealer. And he coached me and asked me to take the drugs. And once I realized what I was in, I asked to speak to the judge in his chambers, and he agreed to speak to me, which was Judge Marino in Iberville Parish. After speaking with the judge and I told him my side of the story, he agreed to place me on 3 years probation, unsupervised fee, and if he never heard of my name again, he would expunge it from my record.
Well, and I commend you on that. And that's why I say I want to apologize because I've got to use your case to illustrate.
I know you were.
Well, okay. The only thing that troubles me about this is, and this is not anything against you, because I think what you've done is remarkable, and I think it's great, I just regret having to ask you this question. But you have taught for 2 years in a charter school.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And at the time that you taught, did they ever ask you about that?
The second year, the first year it didn't come up. And I answered the question, honestly, just the way I did on the conduct form for here. I went and did the background check at the state trooper's office in Baton Rouge, and it didn't show up. But the second year, when they lost our background checks for some reason, and it came up. So they called me over the phone and talked with me, coached me about it or whatever, and told me that they were waiting to make a decision. But after review of all my documentation, such as you guys did, they decided to keep me on board at the charter school.
Because see, that's the problem I have. That should have happened here 2 years ago, and it should have been done, and then we wouldn't have had this issue. But the problem there is, well, and what you talked about the expungement was that about, I guess it's been about 3 years ago. At one time, school boards and BESE did not get the expunged records, and we didn't know about any of this. So the district attorney in Rapides Parish, James Down, and I were able to get some legislation through that took care of that problem, and that's why school boards now get that. But the concern I have here is that should have triggered an examination at that time, and it should have gotten it clear whether or not you or someone in your like condition would have been able to do that. And not everyone in your position like that has done the remarkable things that you've done, and I commend you for it. And I think you'll be a great role model for us. But it does bring the point that I'm trying to make, and that is that we should know who's in our classrooms with our kids and how they got to be there.
I agree.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more comments? Well, the motion was to grant. If we don't have any more comments, any objections to the motion? Well, the motion carried. I want to say congratulations to you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Washington. You've done
Thank
a
you.
marvelous job, and you and your husband are a good team, and we're glad to have you before the students. And if there are any more items,
That concludes your agenda.
well, the meeting is adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.